Good evening, and welcome to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. Today is Thursday, September 12th, and it's now 7 o'clock, and we will start the meeting. I'll say up front that my name is Andrew Black. I am a member of the board. Our chairman tonight, Matt Manahan, is not present here tonight, and the first course of business after we introduce ourselves quickly will be to elect a chairman pro tem. So starting at my left, Michael, if you could please introduce yourself.
I am Mike Martin, and I would move to nominate you for.
We'll do that in a minute. Let's do introductions now.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Greco.
Ron Cobb.
I'm Ligaya Atwood.
Bill Longley, Code Enforcement Officer.
And can I just say, I think, Michelle, you might need to bring your mic a little closer. Thank you.
Sure.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Christina Silberman. Christina Silberman, Administrative Assistant.
Thank you. So the first order of business will be to elect a chair pro tem. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Andrew Black.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, let's please vote. And to show of hands, all those in favor of Andrew Black? By default, I have been elected the chair pro tem. So we have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is an application by Matt Almy for a non-conforming change of use to his current property. You can wait one second here. What I'm going to do first, though, is I'm going to read the Board of Adjustment Appeals Rules of Procedure, so we're all familiar with what those are and how the procedure will work tonight. No business may be transacted by the board without a quorum consisting of 4 members. The concurring vote of majority of those voting, but at least 3 votes is necessary to grant any application. If any matter fails to receive a favorable vote of the majority of the board members voting, the application will be deemed to have been denied. All testimony must be presented at the podium so that it can be recorded. Testimony will be videotaped. The videotape will be available for inspection at the town office during regular business hours. Applicants will first state their case and may present testimony and other evidence. The burden of proof is on the applicant to present all the evidence the board needs to determine whether the project will comply with every applicable requirement of the ordinance. Applicants are strongly encouraged to provide with their written submissions all evidence in support of their application. Following the conclusion of the applicant's case, members of the public may present testimony and offer evidence in the following order. First, those in favor of the application. Second, those opposed to the application. And third, those neither for nor against the application. Applicants may then offer rebuttal evidence. Parties acting through the chair may cross-examine witnesses. The chair may limit irrelevant, immaterial, or unduly repetitious testimony. Members of the board may ask questions at any time with the permission of the chair. At the conclusion of the rebuttal evidence, the public portion of the proceeding will be closed and the board will rule on the application pursuant to the applicable provisions of Cumberland's zoning ordinance and Maine law. The chair may reopen the public portion during deliberations if the chair determines it is necessary to do so in the interest of a full and fair hearing and a complete record. After a decision has been made, the board will not entertain a new appeal of similar import concerning the same property until 1 year has elapsed from the date of the decision, unless the chair believes that an injustice was done because of a mistake of law or misunderstanding of fact, or if the chair believes a change has taken place in some essential aspect of the case sufficient to warrant a reconsideration of the appeal. The board's procedures also are governed by Maine law, Title 30A, Section 2691 and 4353 of the Maine Revised Statutes, and Section 315-77 of the Cumberland Code. So with those procedures enunciated, I have one quick point I'd like to raise with Bill here, just to make sure that we're not exceeding the scope of our review. My understanding is that under the 31574 of the ordinance. What we're looking at is the expansion of a non-conforming use of residential, other than residential property. And we're looking at the expansion of the square feet of floor space only, as opposed to changes that might be made to the site. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe what you're looking at is under Section C of 315-74. And you're reviewing the floor space expansion of the addition to the building for service area.
And I guess my question is, would this applicant need, if there are any changes to the site that are inconsistent with the original site review that was approved, would they have to go before the planning board to get amendments approved?
Yes, the first step is before this board for the use in the square footage to be approved. And the second step would be then site plan review through the planning board for the amendments from the original application.
Okay, thank you. So with that, Mr. Almy, if you would like to go up to the podium and begin your presentation. And I suggest too, just because we have new members on the board, if you could give a little history to, because you were before this board
Hello?
before.
Yes, thank you for gathering here tonight for me. My name is Matt Almy. I've lived in Cumberland since 2011. I have 3 boys that go to school here, and in 2019, my ex-business partner and myself, Mark Axelson, came before the board to appeal to the adjustment for nonconforming use of 174 Main Street to change it from a gas station / convenience store to a used car sales and reconditioning facility. At that point in time, there really wasn't, we added on a very, very minimal amount of square footage that you can see on the building right here. There's a little bump out that's real hard to see on this, but basically it allowed for a garage that we do detailing in off the back of the building. That was approved, and we made the changes, and we went through the planning board, and we've been operating there successfully since August of 2020. During that 4 years that we've been in business, we have been leasing the property at 296 Main Street, formerly Revolutionary Gas. We've been using those service bays there to conduct all the service for both our own vehicles and for customer vehicles. What we'd like to do moving forward is to add a 4-car garage on the back side of the property on 174 Main Street with an internal access road that will be only for employee use, and you can see that road is right here, and access from Wynn Road. The building will be, or the footing will be recessed because of the grade of the property. It will be roughly 10 feet lower than the existing lot and dealership. We also would like to ask for a 5-foot extension of the existing service garage. So what we found is that we can't fit long, or any pickup truck really, other than like a Tacoma or something, inside for a detail, and it's presented some issues cleaning pickup trucks and Suburbans and Yukon XLs during the wintertime. The 4-car garage we'd like to add on is for working on our own vehicles plus vehicles for the public. Same thing we've been doing for the last 4 years. That's really it. I'm open to questions. I believe that we've been in good standing with the town. I believe that we've been considerate and fair neighbors. I believe that, we've done everything that's been asked to us, and we are contributing members to the community. So I ask that the board approve the adjustment for change of non-conforming use at 174 Main Street for a 4-car garage and an access road on the property to be used by employees, and a 5-foot extension of the service garage, or the reconditioning garage on the side of the building facing town.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to clarify here that we're not looking at the driveway and the site portions of that. Those will be discussions you have with the...
Yes, I have to go through the planning
Right.
board. I was advised to put together a basic sketch of what I would like to do and what it would look like, and then assuming that I can move forward, then I get into the nitty-gritty of the whole design.
Right. So our focus is really on the expansion of the square footage. And maybe if you could explain a couple of things. One, how much square footage is there now for your building? How much are you proposing to add? And if you could show what that looks like
Yeah.
on your diagram.
Roughly, we have 1,500 square feet right now, and I don't have an exact number, I apologize. And that is for the showroom and 2 offices, and then there's a back bathroom, there is an employee bathroom, and then there's a small garage right here, which is one of the things we're looking to extend. What we're looking to add on is a building that's going to be connected to the existing building. It's not going to be a separate building, roughly doubling the size of the property. Based on this, we're looking at about 1,600 square feet adding, plus the garage bay is 14 feet wide by an additional 5 feet, so there's another 70-ish square feet there that we'd be adding. So total, just under 1,700 square feet is what we'd like to add.
So is the existing building a 1-story building, and is that all on the same grade?
Yes, the existing building is a 1-story building on the same grade. There is theoretically a garage that I believe was used at one point in time under the side of the building facing Wind Road. But it can't be used.
What's there now in that piece?
It's cemented in with cinder blocks. It's got a dirt floor. I mean, it's pretty rough.
Is it accessible from the first floor?
No, it's only accessible from the lower lot.
How big is that building?
The
big is-
existing
yeah.
the existing building is roughly 1,500
No,
square.
I mean, including that garage that you don't think is usable?
No, I'm not including that. I'm not including that in the 1,500 square feet. I don't even,
Do you know how big roughly that existing building is?
that goes, well, it's the length of this building, the width of the building by approximately 20 feet wide. I would venture to guess that it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 square feet going on the high end.
And that's not used for anything?
My father has some old car parts down there right now. They're collecting mold.
But that's below grade, is that correct?
That's below grade, yes.
Your proposed addition, is that I think you indicated it was at a lower grade, or it's what appears?
Yes,
from
that
the-
would be at the grade of the lower parking lot, which currently exists for wholesale vehicles. There's a fence right here along the property, and it's about 10 feet lower grade than the existing building. And that would be the entry point for the garage, either off Wind Road or to be used internally from the access road.
And is that a single story, or how tall is that actual new addition going to be?
We haven't gotten that far yet. It will be a single-story building, perhaps some storage above, but it's going to be tall. It's going to have a high roof on the inside.
So will the roof exceed the height of the existing roof on the existing building?
I can't imagine that it would. I'm not gonna say with certainty no. I haven't gotten that far in the design.
Other members of the board? Any questions for Mr. Almy?
You stated that you were previously leasing,
Yep.
are you
Yes.
still leasing, or?
Yes, we are still leasing the property at 296 Main Street from CN Brown.
And that will continue, even after your addition?
When this is all done, no. My intent would be not to continue.
So it's to purchase.
Excuse me?
So your intention is to purchase the property, is that what you're saying?
Well, my intention would be, first and foremost, to be able to buy the property at 296 Main Street. CN Brown is dragging their feet, and I am leasing a property that, in the event they decide they don't want me to lease the property anymore, not having a service garage and being a car dealership would be devastating. So my plan would be to build this, and while I'm building this, continue to lease that property, and then upon completion, move out of that property and do this. Now, in the event that this gets approved, I go through the planning board and all that gets approved, and I have this project ready to go, my next step would be to go to CN Brown and say, I need to make a move here. You're either gonna sell me the property, I don't wanna continue to lease, or I'll see out the 1-year lease contract that I currently have, and at the end of that, I'm out. You're welcome, thank you.
I have
Other
a-
questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the extent and the nature of the services to be performed in the addition. I know that was a topic that came up a few years ago during the initial discussion. And what, if any, changes do you anticipate to the nature of the services or the extent of noise or additional traffic?
I mean, we currently service 8 to 10 customer pay vehicles daily. So it would be safe to assume that by having a bigger garage, we have 2 bays now with 2 mechanics. With 4 bays and 3 mechanics, I could, theoretically service as many as 15 cars a day for the public, plus my own inventory. So, yes, there would be an add to traffic in the neighborhood of 15 cars a day. Now, bear in mind that a lot of people drop off their car and then have somebody else come and pick them up, so they're not sitting there. So keep that in mind, but we're talking, at the most 5, 6, 7 cars an hour. Not a lot of traffic. As far as the services that we perform in the shop, I don't anticipate doing any. We're not gonna paint. We're not gonna do any body repairs or anything like that. We're gonna continue doing suspension, tires, brakes, regular maintenance. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and for the additional volume of customers for those services, where will the cars be located? Like, will
Well,
it
we
be
have
near-
some, I'm not exactly sure how, I believe in this drawing, there's 9 spots down below here for customer cars, plus the 4 bays. And these existing spots up here, which currently my wife and I park in.
Mr. Almy, how many bays will there be, garage door bays for that?
I'd like 4. 4 would be ideal. I'm not sure. Once we get it may end up being 3, but I'm gonna shoot for 4.
So this would be right across?
Yep, right here.
So
One,
how many feet is necessary
two,
to put 4 bays in?
3, 4. I believe the bays need to be 9 feet wide, and you have to have, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but at least 3 feet between them.
So on your drawing right now, are there dimensions, so that's
There are rough dimensions on the drawing, and the building is
34 by 40, is that?
yeah, it's 34 by 40. The building will have to be wider. It can come out as far as, it's probably looking at coming out here, probably an additional 6 or 8 feet.
So I guess I just want to make sure we understand how big the proposed building is. On the drawing here, it says it would be 34 feet wide by 40 feet deep.
I anticipate it somewhere in the or 1,600 square feet, which would be a 40 by 40 footprint. That's what I would expect. How we use that 1,600 square feet, I'm not entirely sure. Would it be 42 wide and 38 deep? I don't know yet. I haven't got that far.
So what are you asking for approval for? Because right now, if we were to approve this application, it would be for a 34 by 40 foot.
I'm asking for an approval for a 1,600 square foot building.
Plus the 70, plus the 70.
Plus the 70 square feet, yes, thank you, up here.
Right, the 5 by 14.
1670.
Again, how that's 1,600 feet below grade and 70 feet at current grade. Again, I haven't sat with the surveyors or the engineers and got beyond this point.
But my understanding is that the new proposed building, aside from the additional 5 feet, that would all be on a lower grade.
Correct,
And-
yes. And the idea would be to have a staircase inside, so customers that came in off Wynn Road could drop their car off and walk in a little office, sitting room, and take a staircase up to the waiting area or the showroom that we currently have.
And I'm assuming there would be lifts or something inside?
4. I'd like 4.
Where would your doors be on that map? Your entrance doors for the overhead doors?
1, 2, 3, 4, all facing Wynn Road.
On 34 feet?
Not on 34 feet, it's gonna have to be wider than that. That's why I'm asking for a 1,600 square foot building.
Yeah, and I guess what we'd like to know is, what's that 1,600 feet? Is it 40 by 40? Is that what you're asking for, or are you asking for some other?
I'm asking for the approval of 1,600 square feet with a small degree of flexibility with the planning board to get into exact dimensions for exactly what I need, but not to exceed 1,600 square feet. And clearly, the planning board isn't going to approve a building that's 10 feet wide and 160 feet long. It needs to make sense.
Any further questions from the board? Yes, please.
The noise factor, I know you had talked about
Yep.
putting some type of insulation inside of the walls, so is
Uh,
that something that would be
We
planned?
are, well, in the summertime, we're going to air conditioning the building. Currently, we leave the doors open, and that leaves a lot of noise. That's not to say that doors won't be open to bring vehicles in while somebody else might be using an impact. But having the building air conditioned, the goal is to keep the building sealed and insulated.
Mr. Alman, any last points before we open it up to the public?
No?
Okay,
No,
thank you very
thank you.
much. So at this time, we will open up for public comment, and as we indicated in the rules of procedure earlier, We will first ask if there is anyone in the public who would like to testify in favor of the application. If there is, please move to the podium. Seeing none, I will ask if there is anyone in the public who would like to testify against the application. If there is, please move to the podium. I don't see anyone. And now I will ask if there is anyone in the public who would like to testify neither in favor nor against the applicant. Mr. Kendall, please.
Good evening, members of the board. Adrian Kendall, 190 Main Street. I'm a couple of houses down from the present location, and if you read the minutes, I also was here for the initial application when the use was converted. As an initial matter, I want to say that based on my reading of the ordinance and the application and hearing the testimony, this is actually also a change in use, because we have a repair facility now being added to the use. It's at present, it's car sales, it's vehicle sales, and detailing. So to me, that's a pretty significant change in use. But that said, the standard remains the same because it reverts you back to section C, subsection C. I'm neither for nor against because Mr. Almy reached out to me and asked me my thoughts on it. I agree he's been a very good neighbor, considerate. We appreciate the improvements he's made to the lot. But the concern I have, and so I told him I'm not opposed to it because I actually sympathize with him as a business person here in the community. But the big concern I have is one that was voiced when this initial application was approved, which is that we find ourselves in the situation that I raised at the time, which is that now he's forced to expand due to business exigencies. It's not appropriate. It's a rural residential district. The property initially should have been allowed to revert to residential. It would have been a nice affordable home lot that we don't have enough of in the town, but the board saw otherwise. The concerns I raised, and I appreciate the members of the board who questioned noise, because I think those are obviously, as neighbors, I appreciate the spatial considerations I actually don't see as neither here nor there. I appreciate Mr. Black raising those, but in terms of the impact on the neighborhood, those aren't really material. But the usage, the hours, the noise, the traffic, those are. And so I would ask you to consider those very carefully as you look as the effect, what the actual ordinance says, and as you make your decision on whether you think this is appropriate for under the ordinance and for this district, and find out more about, for instance, decibels, the hours. Would the doors really be kept closed? Really, the hours of business, I think, as well would be important, and other debris, dumps. I mean, there's lots of other issues that come into play when we talk about the effect, the adverse effect on the neighborhood. That's not. There's a lot of focus on the dimensions. But I think that's a misreading of the ordinance. If you're focusing on what are the effect of the dimensions in terms of the impact, it's the actual use and how that's put into play in the expansion. And so I would urge the board to consider that in its deliberation. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Kendall?
Sorry, I didn't mean to walk away.
I have a question, just curious as to your experience as a close neighbor with regard to traffic and noise.
Frankly, I don't see an adverse effect, Mr. Almy, at least with respect to the current use. The major effect, and actually we agreed when we spoke, is speeding. And people, it's actually better for his business if people were to drive more slowly so they can see his inventory of cars. And people who use his business, I think, will be slowing down, because they're actually slowing down to use it. So I don't have a concern really as to traffic in terms of the speed piece, the volume. I think we heard an additional, I don't want to misstate or mischaracterize the testimony, I think it was 12 to 15 additional cars a day based on what he anticipates on turnover in those bays. And to me, that's, when you consider the overall traffic on Route 9, that's really negligible. I think the bigger issue is hours of operation, noise, impact hammers. That's something totally different than what we have going on now, is my understanding. And so how does that affect it? And those are the primary points.
Thank you.
Mr. Gunn, one question. I think one of the concerns in the first several years ago, when they applied for the change of use, was the noise that might be created from some of the tools, impact wrenches and so forth. From your experience, has that been an issue at all?
Not as current, based on the current use, but we're not here based on the current use, right? We're based on the new expanded use.
Well, we're
And it's not a
actually,
repair facility currently.
we're actually here for the expansion of the building itself. And in other words, if there's a change in use, Mr. Elmy would need to apply for a change in use. And that, I don't see that as part of the application right now. So it might be an enforcement issue in the future if he does operate outside of the current approval for the change of use.
Well, first of all, I'll disagree with your interpretation because it's not, the question is, the standard is whether it has a greater adverse impact on property in the district or the neighborhood. That doesn't relate to spatial dimensions. The question is, does the expanded square footage, and clearly there's a use applied to it, that it would be nonsensical just to say, well, it's only the expansion. That wouldn't make any sense on the ordinance. And second of all, as I stated at the beginning, I disagree with the categorization that this does not represent a change in use when it's currently not a repair facility and a repair facility is being added.
Yeah, the only point I was making is that it's not an application for a change of use.
I understand that, and I'm telling you, my view is, as you interpret the ordinance, it should be.
So the board can discuss that when it deliberates.
Of course, I'm not the arbiter, you are, but I'm telling you my position as I read the ordinance and what I hear from the testimony.
And that's why we have people from the public testify. So thank you.
Thank you.
I would just note that it looks to me like, looking at some, I've got a lot of paper here, but it looks to me like the original 2019 application was for maybe a more limited, but a repair facility.
Yeah, that's my understanding
And there
as
was,
well.
seemed like a lot of discussion about the repairs that would go on there. So I don't know if it is a change of use to call it a repair. I mean, it's obviously more intense now, if you get that. That was an observation.
Yeah, I would also echo that. My read of the 2019 application was that there was a service component, albeit a small one. I thought that the majority of the service would be for inventoried cars, but that there would still be some minor services provided to the public.
We can deliberate about that.
Yeah.
And I agree that was part of the discussion, but I think the intensity of what it is, it's a public repair facility as opposed to a private repair facility to basically get inventory ready to roll out is a different use. And the intensity of it and the nature of it, as the testimony itself was, is that it's a different use. But you're the arbiter.
And just to clarify, Mr. Kendall, you're not testifying against the application, is that correct?
No, I told Mr. Almy I wouldn't, and because I feel bad that he's been put in this position. I don't think it's correct that he was put in a position in the first place, and I don't want to oppose a business in the town. So I'm here on a neutral basis.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Kendall.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to testify neither for nor against the application?
Good evening, Bob Hale, Cumberland Town Council, and a close abutter also. Just a little bit of history on this piece of property. Ronnie Copper's probably got more history than I do, but Harry C. Holzer owned that building 60 years ago and ran it as a garage and gas pumps. There were two other repair facilities on Wind Road over the years that have long since gone out of business. They were both down on the Falmouth end, but I struggled with whether I wanted to speak for or against or neither way, and I remember coming down here when C.N. Brown proposed changing from a gas repair facility into a convenience store, and I was adamantly opposed to that because I knew at the time that we were going to have a absent landlord, and nothing's worse than having an absent landlord in a residential neighborhood. It's like having a rental property and, or an Airbnb as your next-door neighbor. You don't know who's coming or who's going, but when you have a landlord who is, has some skin in the game, if you will, as Ronnie Moon, who bought it from Harry Holster, he was a community member, and, you know, if there was a problem, you know, I didn't have a problem going down and talking to Ronnie. He just happened to be a high school classmate of mine also. But anyway, C.M. Brown bought the property, and they changed the use of it, and I was adamantly opposed to it because I knew what the outcome was, and thankfully, it failed. And so the next change of use, Mr. Almey's use here, is a much better suited because he is a member of the community. He's got skin in the game. That being said, you know, I think Adrian brought up probably the most compelling things that need to be spoken about here this evening, and that will probably be addressed at the at the planning board level. But the use of a repair facility is a much-needed use in the community. If you look around Falmouth, Yarmouth, and Cumberland, I can count over 10 repair facilities that no longer exist. And you know, the options for somebody to have their car worked on are few and far between today, unless you go to a dealership. So I'm going to work on my own truck this weekend, and I know what I'd much rather have somebody else do it. But you know, the cost of taking it to the dealership compels me to do the work on it myself. So I think a lot of the issues here are issues that need to be dealt with at the planning board level. I think that the entrance onto Wynn Road mitigates a lot of concerns by noise and lighting and those issues there. And I think that while this board may not ask those questions or deal with those concerns, certainly I'm going to bring them up now that, you know, the neighbors are going to look at how what the hours of operation are, what the lighting is, what's the landscaping going to be, and how that building will fit in with the other existing structure, and all those things that probably won't get addressed here this evening. But at the end of the day, this is a use that is a need in the community, and while we can't judge or make a judgment call on that, certainly I would not stand opposed to this application for that. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Bell?
I have a question. Just wondering how often or how frequently you see, I don't know where you're located exactly in relation to the business, but do you see, I know I pass by Wynn Road a lot, do you see a lot of, since this business has been open, do you see a lot of backup of traffic in general in that area, more so than?
We did have a couple of concerns early on with outside vendors bringing cars in and on car carriers, and either using my driveway, which is right across the street, Wild Way, trying to turn around in there, or they were parking on the opposite side, and my wife and I, or you know, particularly my wife, trying to get out of Wild Way and look down. And so once we had addressed our concerns, it quickly stopped, and there really is no concern now. They've been good neighbors.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Bell. And is there anyone else from the public who would like to testify neither for nor against this application? Seeing none, Mr. Almey, we'll give you an opportunity for some rebuttal.
Not so much a rebuttal, just to answer some things that I failed to mention. Hours of operation, currently we run service at 296 Main Street from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. I would like to have the option to be open till 5 PM in the service department. And then that's Monday through Friday. Sometimes Bruce or Alex will come in on a weekend and work on their own vehicle or a family vehicle, but other than that, I currently don't have a need to ever be open on Saturday in the service department. As far as repairs currently done at the facility, really the only thing I'm currently doing is fixing people's tires when people pull in with nails in their tires, and I patch their tire. And sometimes I have to use an impact gun, and sometimes I can patch the tire without even pulling it off. So very probably less than once a day, I use an impact gun outside at the property. With the new building, the idea would be not to have any used outside, with the understanding that every once in a while something happens, a car has a flat tire sitting out on the lot, and you might need to bring some tools outside to get a job done or get a vehicle inside so you can do the proper work. I believe that was the only thing that I wanted to bring up.
May I ask one more question?
Yeah.
In 2019, at the first application, I thought you had requested 2 bays. Is there just existing, is there just 1 bay or 2 for service?
On this property?
Yes.
On this property, currently, there is no bay that's adequate for service. There's only 1 bay, and it's right here, and the door is right here. And that's one of the things I'm asking is for an expansion of 5 feet on that so I can get a full-size truck in there. The reason it's not conducive for, it's too short to put a lift in. You couldn't put a lift in that.
Okay.
There is, I believe, many, many years ago, before I lived here, there was a bay underneath here, and that's the property that's sort of derelict, or the room that's underneath my office currently. But as of right now, this bay's only use is for detailing vehicles. So right now, service bays on the property, I would say, are 0.
So what are you doing on the property currently
I'm selling cars.
for service? For service.
On this property,
Yes.
the only service I'm performing on this property are detailing vehicles. I have a full-time detailer, and we detail between 1 and 2 cars a day, and patching people's tires and pulling nails out of tires. That's currently the only service I'm performing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Almy?
Thank
Very
you.
well, thank you. And that will close tonight's public portion of the proceeding. And we will now go to the board to deliberate on the application. My suggestion for this would be if we could have a motion on the application that we second, and then we'll open it up for discussion after that. So is there a motion on the application? And this is only for purposes of discussion. You're not committed if you make the motion to voting in favor of it.
I
Martin.
move to approve the application.
Is there a second? There's been a motion to approve the application and a second, and I will now open it up for a discussion among the board members. And I will let anyone who wants to jump in and start it if they'd like to.
I'll jump in.
Please do. Thank you, Michelle.
So in looking at the section of the code with regard to determining whether the addition or the expansion has no greater adverse effect, it occurs to me that we should be comparing the current use to the proposed additional use or use in connection with the expansion. And I'm not sure if doubling the size and now understanding that there's very minimal service occurring, whether that change will result in greater adverse impact with regard to disturbance. There is some benefit in the site plan that there were mitigations put in place with regard to the existing property, and I think that those should be continued, but I think the discussion that we should have is whether this expansion will have a greater impact with regard to those factors like noise, traffic, et cetera.
Other comments, discussion? Well, I'll jump in then. So, those who were involved might recall I was here at the original decision that the board made, and I was actually one of two people that voted against the change of use. And my concern back then was the increase in the noise potentially, and the impact wrenches and other things that could be used. And my concern was that the change of use itself could lead, wouldn't meet the standard that we had to apply at the time. But the board at that time voted to approve the change of use, and so what we're looking at now is whether the expansion of this, the floor plan basically, if that expansion itself would impact the things negatively as laid out in the standard. And I think what we look at is not necessarily how it's currently being used, but rather what the approval for the change of use was. So in other words, what was allowed in that approval. Now, they may not be doing everything that they were allowed to do when it was approved. My understanding is that there was an understanding that there would be some repairs that were done there. And I don't know if that is reflected in the extent of that's reflected in the decision itself. But if there's an expansion of the approved use, then Mr. Almy would need to come back and apply for some sort of, or if there was a change in the approved use, he would have to apply for that, for a change in the use. But that's my understanding of how the law works. My understanding is here, he is not applying for a change in use, he's applying for an expansion of his allowed use now that would be created by this larger building. Now, what concerns me is the size of the increase. It's basically going to double the size of his facility there. But if it's not really changing the use or the approved use, it is out the back of the property, away from the other abutters and residences for the most part. We haven't heard any testimony against the application tonight. We've heard some good points raised that we should be concerned about, and I think those are all valid points. But I guess at this point, I'm leaning toward approving the application. And looking for other comments from other board members as well.
I would agree with Mr. Black. I know what this property did look like 30 or 40 years ago, or longer even, and the proposed that he's got here looks like it's going to take away from traffic on the Main Street. It may put a little more traffic on the hill coming up to the stop sign, but it's going to be low enough, I think, so it shouldn't bother residents or traffic. I don't believe the traffic is going to be that heavy in and out of the facility. It's a very hard piece of property to do anything on, the way the topography of it is, and certainly since Mr. Almy has been there, it's improved tenfold over what it used to be. And it probably will always be some kind of a commercial facility, whatever it may be. And I think he's done a good job, and I think we should approve this. I actually think that his application is too small. 34 by 40 garage or 1,600 square feet. is squeezing it, I think.
Any other comments, thoughts from board members?
I agree with a lot of what's been said. First of all, I mean, it was specifically approved as an auto sales and repair shop. There was a lot of discussion about the level of repairs, and it doesn't sound like in actuality, that level of repair has been going on there, but I think the town's, letter of November of 2019 just says, basically converts it to, the use to a sales and repair shop. So I don't think it's really a change of use. And it seems like some of these intensity issues might be better dealt with in the planning board phase. And I agree with a lot of what's been said. I don't travel out that way as much as some of you do probably, but it certainly is, it seems from not a neighbor, but it seems like a more attractive situation than it used to be back when it was C and Brown, which seemed sort of out of place and an eyesore to me, but, so I'm inclined to vote for it, to approve.
I also appreciate the fact that the original approval was for a service component, and in talking about the layout of the site, you don't have the infrastructure to be able to accomplish what you set out to do originally, so.
Anything else? So one thing I'd like just to get clarified, Michael, your motion was to approve the application, and if we could clarify that to, is there the actual plan that was submitted, or as Mr. Almy suggested, was to increase it up to 1,600 square feet? What did you intend?
I would at least clarify and amend my motion to give it up to 1,600 square feet. And I'm a little uneasy about not having exact dimensions, but I think that, I don't know if we can, as he said, I don't want a 16, something disproportionate, so I'm not sure how to characterize that, but I'm okay with up to 1,600 square feet.
Okay. And Ron, is that consistent with, or your second consistent with that?
Yep.
Okay. Bill?
Is that addressing the 70 square foot for the bump out as well?
Yeah, and I would include that in my motion, yes.
Ron, is you fine with a second on that?
That's fine.
Okay, so that's, in other words, it's the bump out, the 14 by 5 foot piece on the garage, as well as 1,600 square foot, up to 1,600 square feet on the new building itself.
That's my understanding of what we're voting on.
Okay.
what I
And so,
intended to be.
one last chance to make any comments from the board, otherwise we'll go to vote. Very well. All those in favor of the motion? Against? None. It's 5 in favor, 0 against. The application has been approved. And Mr. Almy, I understand you can probably work with Bill that your next step is to go talk to the planning board about the site itself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The only other thing we have on the agenda is to approve the minutes. I have a question about that, and is this set of minutes, is that represent the decision that was made at the last board meeting? There's no separate written decision, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I will note, too, that I think it was just Michael, Ron, and I that were here. Other members should recuse from approving the minutes. But is there a motion to approve the minutes that were?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Against? Anybody abstaining? We should, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Two abstentions,
Two.
2 abstentions. Okay, good. I think we're good. Do we have any other things on the agenda? Are we good?
That's everything.
Okay.
We'll just make sure we sign the approval for tonight.
Yep. Board members, stick around to sign. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Motion to
Pass it
adjourn,
down.
moved, seconded, all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So the chairman will